Good morning and welcome to Barbara's Bulletin. I'm your host, Barbara. Today we're starting with a developing story from the Middle East, where tensions are running high after Israel's far-right national security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem and said he prayed there, challenging the delicate decades-old status quo arrangement that prohibits Jewish prayer at the site. According to reports from the Straits Times and France 24, Minister Ben-Gvir led a group of visitors to the compound on August 3, which is also known as Temple Mount to Jews. Videos released by a small Jewish organization showed him walking in the compound, and other videos circulating online appeared to show him praying. However, Reuters could not immediately verify the content of these videos. The visit has sparked condemnation from Palestinian authorities, with a spokesman for President Mahmoud Abbas saying that it crossed all red lines and calling on the international community to intervene. The Waqf, the foundation that administers the complex, said that Minister Ben-Gvir was among 1,250 visitors who ascended the site and prayed, shouted, and danced. It's worth noting that Israel's official position accepts the rules restricting non-Muslim prayer at the compound, which is considered one of the most sensitive locations in the Middle East. Suggestions that Israel would alter these rules have sparked outrage in the Muslim world and ignited violence in the past. Minister Ben-Gvir has been a vocal advocate for Jewish prayer to be allowed at the site, and his visit has raised concerns about the potential for escalation in the region. The international community is watching this situation closely, with many calling for calm and restraint. As we continue to follow this story, it's essential to remember the complex history and sensitivities surrounding this issue. We'll provide updates as more information becomes available and explore the implications of this development on the region. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're halfway through our show today, and we're diving into a developing story that's been making headlines around the world. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is deepening, with reports of widespread famine and shortages of essential supplies. According to recent updates, the Hamas-run health ministry has reported that 175 people, including 93 children, have died from malnutrition. The situation on the ground is dire, with many families struggling to access basic necessities like food and medicine. The Israeli military has been accused of blocking aid from reaching those in need, while Israel maintains that it is doing everything it can to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance. We've seen reports of chaotic scenes at aid distribution centers, where desperate civilians have been gathering to receive much-needed supplies. Unfortunately, these gatherings have sometimes turned violent, with Israeli forces using force to disperse the crowds. The international community has been calling for a cessation of hostilities and an end to the blockade, which has been in place for months. Meanwhile, there are efforts underway to deliver aid to those affected by the crisis. Egypt has announced that it is sending 2 lorries carrying fuel into Gaza, which will help to alleviate some of the pressure on medical facilities. Additionally, countries like France and Italy have pledged to send humanitarian aid to the region. It's a complex and multifaceted situation, with no easy solutions in sight. As the international community continues to grapple with the crisis, one thing is clear. The people of Gaza are in desperate need of assistance, and it's imperative that we find a way to get them the help they need. We'll continue to follow this story and bring you updates as more information becomes available. In the meantime, we urge all parties involved to prioritize the safety and well-being of civilians and to work towards a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're wrapping up today's show with a story that's been making headlines around the world. Tens of thousands of people gathered in Sydney, Australia, to march across the iconic Harbour Bridge in support of Gaza and to call on the Australian government to increase pressure on Israel to alleviate the humanitarian crisis. The march, which was rare for the usually busy road, saw demonstrators carrying Palestinian flags, banners, and signs as they swarmed the bridge. Notable figures such as WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, former Foreign Minister Bob Carr, and Greens Senator Mehreen Faruqi were among those in attendance. The United Nations World Food Programme has warned of crisis levels of food insecurity in Gaza, with scores of aid groups reporting widespread starvation. Israel has blocked all aid from entering the enclave for several weeks, prompting some world leaders to ratchet up pressure on Israel to alleviate the humanitarian crisis. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is facing mounting pressure to recognize a Palestinian state, following in the footsteps of France, the UK, and Canada. However, he has stated that a decision would be made at an appropriate time, and not just as a gesture, but rather as a way forward if certain circumstances are met. It's worth noting that the New South Wales Police had sought a court order to rule the protest unlawful and unauthorized on public safety grounds, but a NSW Supreme Court judge rejected the application. NSW Premier Chris Minns also expressed concerns about the protest, stating that he didn't support a protest of this scale and nature taking place on the bridge. As we report on this story, it's essential to acknowledge the complexity of the issue and the diverse perspectives involved. We strive to provide a balanced view, recognizing the humanitarian concerns in Gaza, while also acknowledging the security concerns and political nuances at play. The march in Sydney was not an isolated event. Similar protests took place in Melbourne, highlighting the global attention on this critical issue. As we continue to follow this story, we will aim to provide updates and insights that reflect the multifaceted nature of the conflict. That's all for today's Barbara's Bulletin. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay engaged.